Breaking news for you. The State Department ramping up its vetting process, incorporating a plethora of extremely tough and thorough questions for visa applicants. This as refugees admitted into the United States have plummeted under the Trump administration, despite twice failing to institute that 120-day travel moratorium. Here to discuss is Judy Jasser. Judy, thanks for joining us. Of course, there's an article in USA Today and other places really railing against this and even suggesting that something nefarious is going on, that the Trump administration somehow perhaps breaking certain rules. But I assume that they're just following existing laws.
Yeah, and I think the numbers are misleading. Obviously, the Trump administration has brought about a pause, which has decreased the numbers, and there are some sort of left in limbo that are heartbreaking stories. And listen, I supported the pause. It breaks my heart to see the beacon of liberty, which is America, not be as welcoming for refugees. But who's to blame? The Obama administration, who for 8 years or however many years since there have been so many refugees flooding the system, has not had a mechanism of vetting refugees for ideologies of those who would support our values or who share our values. We had none. Some studies show 25% of those into Europe had some sympathies for ISIS. We are finally beginning to vet against that. We needed to do a pause. I hope it's a pause. I'd like to see those numbers start to go back up, because that's what America should be, is welcoming those who share our values. But it's very, I think, disingenuous and deceptive for the media to show that dip in the last 4 months when the Obama administration basically spiked it just in the last 6 to 12 months before they left, and really had no vetting mechanism in place for ideology.
And Zudy, speaking to that, the Pew Research put out a big piece on this in January, and they said 2016 had the highest number of Muslim refugees on record. If you look at the chart, it is a huge, huge spike. Again, we're a charitable nation. We reach out to the people who are disenfranchised. But when you have that sort of spike, a lot of people believe that there's certain security concerns that come with that were totally ignored.
And it's not just about them being Muslim. It's about the Islamists who believe in a theocratic state, the Islamic identity state, if you will. And listen, when you have a Darwinian process of first come, first serve that end up getting here, it's going to end up being 99% Muslim, because that's what's going on in the Middle East right now, is other minorities are getting marginalized and they get pushed out or threatened, and they can't get to the front of the line based on merit. It should be 10-15% Christians, Yazidis, Jews, other minorities, and we're not seeing that. Right. And I hope finally we don't have a religious filter, but we have a political, theopolitical filter against those who don't share our values.
Zudy, stay right there. I want to bring in a panel to help discuss this. Nadia Atwal's with us and Jillian Melcher. Jillian, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I'm a little bit concerned about how this is being implemented, and here's why. You look at Trump rolling out the immigration policy to begin with. There were U.S. translators that were caught up in that, delayed, put in limbo. You look at what's going on right now. The USA Today article that you sent us discussed a man who had converted from Islam to Christianity. His family has basically said that they would try to kill him. He's in Turkey right now, not necessarily a safer place for Christian converts. I just think that it's such a false equivalency to say that we can either do what Germany's doing or do something really extreme. I think there's middle ground here to be compassionate and to let people into our country who truly need this opportunity and deserve it.
But you've observed this firsthand in Germany in the sort of unfiltered, unfeathered, just open-arm policy, and that's actually, in your mind, ruined or hurt Germany tremendously.
I think there's only one formula. If you cannot vet, you must reject. Everything else leads to chaos, and that's what we have seen. This middle-of-the-road thinking, Germany also thought they had it somehow figured out. They did not expect what happened there. And now we see just the latest news, hundreds of Taliban fighters posed as refugees. You cannot really find a perfect vetting system. It's extremely tough to do that. So it's almost naive to believe that you kind of read their minds. But this tough questioning definitely will get these people into a situation where a little bit more of themselves comes forward. We can maybe get a dialogue. We can get a little bit of a feel for it. And it is all you can do. And still, that is not perfect. But we cannot let happen what happens in Europe, not even in Germany. Look at all across Europe. Now suddenly we have cities that used to be safety cities being capitals of rapes, rape capital city Malmö. I mean, those used to be the safest cities in the world.
That's such an extreme example. That's such an extreme example. And I do want a thorough vetting process. I think before we had 2-year vetting process, which was decent. I think we're setting this up, though, as a choice between absolute safety and no refugees and all refugees and no safety. I think that's a really disingenuous
So you're saying we should
way to look
accept
at
a certain amount of danger with this?
No, I'm saying that there is risk inherent in it, but I think that's a risk worth taking. And I think we mitigate that risk by engaging communities, getting the church to be involved in this, like in Canada where you can sponsor refugees, and encouraging assimilation by engaging in the community. This is not just a government problem.
Zuhdi, go ahead, I'm sorry.
And I was just going to say that, you know, if we're going to thread this needle correctly, it's appropriate to talk about extreme vetting, but what are they doing? The same State Department that was not only not allowing, not having a filter against Islamists, was basically being led by a Muslim Brotherhood sympathy, if you will, across Egypt and elsewhere, is still the same staff doing that. So I'd like the Trump administration to begin to engage reformist Muslims, our Muslim reform movement, to talk about that Commission on Radical Islam that the president talked about in the campaign. They need to start implementing that really quickly if this pause is going to be effective. Otherwise, we're just going to pause and then keep allowing the Islamists in. I want to see us vet against the Islamists, but then have America be what it's always been leading the world in, which is being that beacon for those who want to be free and away from oppression and persecution, which we've really not been.
All right, guys, thank you all very, very much. Meanwhile, the major